Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the man of tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
You know, baby, they ask the stallion, they say, how can you still be doing this show after 7 whole years? And you know what I tell them every time? I say, damn it, there's still some dry underwear out there. So the Golden Stallions got to keep going. Somebody has to do this, and I'm here for you, baby. And, you know, we got a pretty fun episode lined up. You know, I want to take it a little easy, maybe, from all the dire straits. There's going to be a joke in there. I'm not running with it. I'm not going to do it. But, you know, get away from, shall we say, a lot of the more, I don't know, depressing news all the time. It feels like a lot of the past few episodes have just been, holy shit, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. What are we going to do? Well, we can kind of step away from that a little bit. But at the same time, get in touch with some reality of some matters. But, you know, why don't we open it up with our first story here? I'm going to try once again. I know I don't always do it, but I'm going to try once again. We're going to get in every segment that I've had lined up. I'll be honest with you. I've been, you know, I say this all the time. I hate saying that. I hate saying I'll be honest with you. I'm always honest with you. I'll be frank with you. Okay. How about that? I want to be frank with you. We might have to, you know, this is an experiment. Doing Sovryn Tech for 1 hour. As compared to the 2 hours that it was in previous years. You know, bringing it back down to 1 hour, which is what it originally ran at 7 years ago, like I mentioned. You know, we might have to go a little longer. Maybe we'll try an hour and a half. Who the hell knows? Maybe it'll end up going back to 2 hours. You know, just to get everything in that we need to get in and talk about every single week, and to get in all the segments and everything, and really honored by all of the sponsors on board and all that, and just to make sure everybody gets their chance to reach out to you, of course, including myself. Well, we might have to expand the show a bit. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time, a conversation that I like to have with, well, my patrons, which, of course, if you want to become a patron of Sovryn Tech, you can join the Zomia One Underground. Zomia One being the network that Sovryn Tech primarily airs on. It's not the only place that it airs. It actually airs on entire radio stations around the world. But regardless, Zomia1.com, go check that out. You can become a patron, get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content and new content every week. And, of course, there's all other kinds of shows on Zomia One that you want to check out, which the Golden Stallion is very much a part of many of those shows. But anyway, why don't we let's get into our lead story. I want to do something a little different. Now, Sovryn Tech is a show about science and technology and how it can help set you free. So it's not just all tech, right? I mean, there's plenty of tech, but that's why we do segments, right? So that we can kind of shake things up a bit. You know, we can talk about blockchain during the This Week in Blockchain segment. We can talk about, well, hell, we could talk about it. You know, HackSec has certain things. HackSec's going to be pretty interesting. And that might get into some, well, I don't want to say scary, but some very interesting things that are coming down. It's more of the Amazon World Domination Tour that I've been talking about for years before any other journalist is really talking about it, or certainly any other tech journalist. But regardless, why don't we go to this story? In fact, this story is kind of a classic. I went back. I was like, let's look in the back catalog of stories that you've sent in to me through the various channels available. Of course, you can reach out to me on Twitter. You can also hit me up on bbs@sovereigntech.com, that being the email address. And people have sent me stories over the years, and I had set them aside, and man, do I have a back catalog of stories, some of which don't make sense really to talk about now, because now we know either the reality of the situation or what came out of, say, a certain story. We know that the story ended up being bullshit, which brings to mind why you don't really ever want to be a current events venue or show, and I've never wanted Sovereign Tech to be like hyper current events, because next week the show becomes meaningless, or even in 20 minutes after the show posts, it becomes meaningless. I like stuff to be evergreen, and this is one of those stories from way back in the Sovereign Tech archives. I've never talked about it before, talked about similar stuff in the past, but that, I was like, let's get into this, because this has been something that either I have disproved or parts of it have been very helpful for me recently with, honestly, a lot of the life changes that, the Golden Stallion's been going through here. So anyway, this is it's from 2013. So sure, that's, 5-6 years old now. But regardless, from Fast Company, I think this is fairly evergreen stuff. And it's why we're more creative when we're tired, and 9 other surprising things about how brains work. Now, I'm not going to read the entire story. We'll just break right into the 9, because basically it's the author of the story saying, oh, well, I tried this, I've been doing this, blah, blah, blah. Kind of similar to what I was just opening with. And then they break actually it's 10, not 9. But let's do this, okay? And let's talk about that first one, which I think, actually, I kind of feel like what the headline's claiming is bullshit. As someone who is, I like to consider myself very creative, and actually I don't have to say that to myself, plenty of you tell me that, but let's read on here. So number 1, these are things that you didn't know about your brain, how your brain works, and maybe how you can be more efficient and more effective in your life as far as, using your brain, which you do all the time, right? So anyway, number 1, your brain does creative work better when you're tired. When I explored the science of our body clocks and how they affect our daily routines, I was interested to find out that a lot of the way I'd planned my days wasn't really the best way to go about it. The way we work in particular actually has a lot to do with the cycles of our body clocks. Here's how it breaks down. If you're a morning lark, say, you'll want to favor those morning hours when you're feeling more fresh to get your most demanding analytical work done. Using your brain to solve problems, answer questions, and make decisions is best done when you're at your peak. For night owls, this is obviously a much later period in the day. Personally, Stanley breaking in here to talk about it. Yeah, I can wake up anytime, and I'm fairly aware, no matter what time that I need to wake up. But I'm definitely more of a night owl. Like I have more motivation and get more work done much later in the day. I don't know what brought that on. I mean, I could talk about a few different theories as to why my body clock started going that way. I don't know that that's something you're necessarily born with. I think that's something that you kind of learn at more formative years. And those formative years, I would dare say, are probably from birth to like maybe 25, something like that, or a little earlier. But regardless, I'm definitely more of that night owl, but again, I can function pretty much any time of the day. So moving on. On the other hand, if you're trying to do creative work, so not the deep analytical work, but creative work, you'll actually have more luck when you're more tired and your brain isn't functioning as efficiently. This sounds crazy, but it actually makes sense when you look at the reasoning behind it. It's one of the reasons why great ideas often happen in the shower after a long day of work. If you're tired, your brain is not as good at filtering out distractions and focusing on a particular task. It's also a lot less efficient at remembering connections between ideas or concepts. These are both good things when it comes to creative work, since this kind of work requires us to make new connections, be open to new ideas, and think in new ways. So a tired, fuzzy brain is of much more use to us when working on creative projects. This Scientific American article, which there's a link in the show notes for, explains how distractions can actually be a good thing for creative thinking. Here it is, quote, insight problems involve thinking outside the box. This is where susceptibility susceptibility to distraction can be a benefit. At off-peak times, we are less focused and may consider a broader range of information. This wider scope gives us access to more alternatives and diverse interpretations, thus fostering innovation and insight. Now, okay, so that's number one, saying that when you're more tired, you're better at creative work. Now, I don't know. I really wish they would define what the fuck they mean by creative work, because absolutely not am I better at writing when I am tired. Not at all. My best writing gets done, when I have that energy at whatever point that happens to be, in the day when I'm feeling the most energy about it. In fact, hell, if there's anything that makes me more creative, it's more of my rituals that seem to make me creative, because I'm not thinking more about what I'm doing. And like they mentioned with the shower, but I don't think a shower is like a place where great ideas come from because you're showering at the end of the night and you're more tired or something like that. I think a shower makes you more creative because you have kind of the white noise going on and you're doing a very, shall we say, important, but menial task that doesn't require a lot of thoughts. And so your brain just has a lot less stress, and the hot water coming on you, de-stresses you and so on. Like in the morning, when I'm making my first cup of coffee, generally, when I'm going through that whole ritual is when I can take in information the best, and it's also when I am easily the most creative. I don't even have to have the coffee yet. It's just doing the ritual that gives me my brain the freedom to just, go where it wants to go. So I think this idea that when you're tired, and I'm not tired. Look, I don't really need coffee. I bring on the coffee to have, not because I'm tired. I get up just fine. I can wake up and boom, away I go. And I do. But, when I first wake up, the coffee is just there for that extra energy to get through like more of the drudging stuff, but it's not a matter of being tired. So I think this is actually crap. I don't agree with it. I don't. And also, again, but what do they mean by creative work? If they don't just mean like writing a novel, some people find that to be drudgery. I don't. I think it's a very enjoyable thing to do. I love writing, Yeah, I don't get it. Also, in fact, when I'm really tired, I'm not thinking about like, what am I going to do with this podcast or this podcast? Am I going to do this with the network? That's not when my great ideas come. My great ideas come when, I'm doing something more ritualistic where I'm at a stage where my mind, doesn't have to be on some task has a lack of stress. And I don't think being tired is necessarily like this stress-free situation. If anything, like you're trying to unwind, and even that's kind of a mental process that like if I'm tired, like I don't even want to think. So I don't know. I don't buy this. I really don't buy this, but maybe you'll think that works for you if you try that out. Or maybe, you can email me if you think somehow, actually, no, Stanley, you're totally wrong. When I'm tired, that's when my best ideas click. That's not how I operate. And granted, also creatively, like in fact, I was listening to a TED Talk, and they were saying that a lot of creativity happens via procrastination. Where, when suddenly like you're at the last second and you have to come up with something, that's when you're creative. Now, ironically, that's a stressful situation where your creativity comes, can kind of kick in. I've felt that at times, like that's worked for me, but that's definitely not where I think my best work comes. But creativity can come from that as well. So maybe creativity comes from a bunch of different places, but this idea that somehow, like even remotely across the board, and everybody's an individual, so it's not the same isn't true for everyone. But the idea that creativity, like even as some kind of average is more possible when people are tired, I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all. But let's go on to their second one and see what they have to say, what other suggestions they have here. Again, we got 10 to get through, so let's do it. Number 2, stress can change the size of your brain and make it smaller. Now, yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying, is that stress fucks with your creativity, and thus, by nature, I would say, is really screwing with your ability to process information and, your ability to just, do that thinking outside of the box. Even I hate that statement because I like to think I'm an outside of the box thinker, but most people I know don't, or who claim to think outside of the box, really don't think outside of the box, Right. I mean, they really don't. Like, they actually think within the framework, and maybe they come with some kind of clever system within the, present framework that we live in, but they're not actually like thinking completely outside of the box. That's such a horrible phrase. I mean, even people, I know there's people who think they're so goddamn rebellious, and they think that they're so edgy, and really, they're either spewing stuff from 100 years ago or older, or, they're just reinforcing the present, like, say, societal, cultural norms and mores that are already here, and they don't even realize that they're doing that. So again, that phrase, thinking outside of the box, is generally horseshit. There's very few of these situations. And well, anyway, I'm not going to say that it's this article, but a lot of these like self-help articles or entrepreneurial articles. I mean, I actually, if you go to my YouTube channel, I did a whole debunking on a lot of this stuff. And that's part of what I want to do here is what's real and, what deserves a good debunking. And again, this was sent in by a Sovereign Tech listener. Yeah, I mean, a lot of like the entrepreneurial advice and also, I mean, it's all crap. It's all stuff really especially if you want to apply like ethics to it, if you want to be ethical about how you do business and things like this, a lot of that entrepreneurial advice is fucking horrible. I mean, like it's downright deplorable. It's taking advantage of people's ignorance and stupidity, which is rampant, but well, anyway, I could quote Ayn Rand on, the fact that taking advantage of people's ignorance is not success, but I don't know. I thought people cared. A lot of my listeners actually cared about Ayn Rand, but then, I thought a lot of people that cared about Ayn Rand actually like would go by what she says, but then, based on their business practices, clearly they don't give a shit. But anyway, I'm not here to praise Ayn Rand. I'm also not here to condemn her either. But anyway, so stress can change the size of your brain. Let me read a little bit of this. I bet you didn't know stress is actually the most common cause of changes in brain function. I was surprised to learn this when I looked into how stress affects our brains. I also found some research that showed signs of brain size decreasing due to stress. One study used baby monkeys to test the effects of stress on development and long-term mental health. Half the monkeys were cared for by their peers for 6 months, while the other half remained with their mothers. Afterwards, the monkeys were returned to typical social groups for several months before the researchers scanned their brains. For the monkeys who had been removed from their mothers and cared for by their peers, areas of their brains related to stress were still enlarged, even after being in normal social conditions for several months. Although more studies are needed to explore this fully, it's pretty scary to think that prolonged stress could affect our brains long term. And there's a great chart here about the stress brain loop, but basically, stress is not good. I don't think you don't need a whole article. You don't even need 3 paragraphs to explain that that's a real problem. Is it helpful if you can summon your talents at will, even when you're under stress, and you can deliver on a deadline? That's phenomenal, right? I mean, good for you if you're capable of doing that. But I don't think very few people would argue that like stress is somehow like this great and wonderful thing, especially in our very sedentary civilization that we seem to be living in right now. Stress isn't good for your brain. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for, your body overall in those ways. Unless it's something that like a stress, if like you're working out, that's a very different kind of stress, right? So regardless, stress bad for your brain, decreases the size of it, and has long-term effects. Oh, I bet. I really, really bet. And in fact, this is something where now I am not a proponent of universal basic income, but I know a lot of people in the tech space are, and a lot of them push for UBI, for universal basic income, because they say this very thing, that basically, no pun on basic, but they say that basically, if a person doesn't have like their immediate survival needs handled, they are going to live in constant stress, and they can't be creative and find creative ways to get out of the hole that they're in because they're just constantly in survival mode. They're constantly stressed out. And it's not an unfair point for them to make. I'm not saying UBI is a solution to that. Okay. But that is something that, that is a point that has some validity to it, and it's backed up by a good degree of research. So anyway, let's move on to number 3. It is literally impossible for our brains to multitask. Now, this is a hard-earned lesson for me. Okay. Now, they lay out the research here, but in fact, here it goes. Research shows your error rate goes up 50% and it takes you twice as long to do things. Here's another quote from the research. When the brain tries to do 2 things at once, it divides and conquers, dedicating 1/2 of our gray matter to each task. Basically, it's like the old, table saying, when you combine talking and eating, you end up doing neither very well, right? And that's the idea, is that when you're trying to do two major things at once, you end up doing both of them very shitty. It just doesn't work. I used to think, in fact, this would be around, say, 2007, so over a decade ago. I remember this is when suddenly, video cards and a lot of other things, it became possible to have a multi-monitor setup, right, with your computer. And of course, a lot of my work gets done on a computer, or has been for most of my life. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have, 8 monitors. They're all going to be hooked up everywhere. I'm going to have so much shit going on at once. This is going to be fucking awesome. And it looked really cool, right? Because it looked like Tank in the Matrix, like 20 years. I can't believe the Matrix came out 20 years ago, almost to the day. But anyway, it looked like that, right? You have all these screens coming down. In fact, even when my screensaver would come on, the screensaver would be on all 8 screens, and it would literally be the Matrix coming down. And I thought it was so awesome and so cool, and I could get so much done. Over here, I'm tagging MP3s, ripping a DVD over here, working on this code over here, writing the game there, doing all this shit. No, you end up getting like nothing done. It looks cool, but that's all that it really does. And I remember when Chromebooks first came out. Okay, when Google's Chromebooks first came out, I was using the thing that when I started using it at the time, now Chromebooks have like multiple windows and everything. At the time when Chromebooks first came out, you could, and I was a Google fanboy at the time. Obviously, I haven't been one of those for years. Fuck Google. But at the time, you could only do one thing at a time, right? Even though you could have tabs and all that open, it could basically only do one process at a time in very early versions of Chrome OS. And I loved that. When I finally did that, I was like, wow, because I was so focused. When I was doing email, I was just doing email and I wasn't doing anything else. And that's so fucking key. Multitasking, this idea that multitasking is somehow a good thing and a possible thing. No way. No way. You're losing your focus, and now there's plenty of research behind it. I dare say that the whole idea of multitasking was either like a workplace experiment done by certain corporations, or it was something touted or put out there. It's almost like back, so 100 years ago. Okay. Here's a couple phrases I want to toss on you. Like the American dream. Okay. What do you think about with the American dream, right? Like having a house, making your millions, whatever. Okay. Or how about this phrase? A man's house is his castle. Those kinds of phrases, those are actually marketing slogans created over 100 years ago by marketing companies. Okay, because most people back then, they didn't own their house. The idea of owning their house was crazy, even in America, as to where and in Europe, actually, what was it, Margaret Thatcher? She had that housing program. Before then, most people in Europe didn't even consider that you could own your house. And that was just in the 80s. In America, it was the same deal about 100 years ago. But then this marketing slogan happens, which was to get you to really just take out loans and do other things. And of course, buy a house and all that. They create all these ideas of the American dream, but it's all fucking marketing slogans. And I half wonder if multitasking, which became more of a thing in the computer, as computers cemented themselves more in the workplace. I could imagine NVIDIA or even ATI at the time. I know they're not, now they're AMD, but ATI or whoever, these graphics companies are oh yeah, now you can have dual screens and you can do more. I could almost believe that was just marketing on their part and very clever marketing department. And because now, that the research, and they were claiming to have research that you could get more done, but now that you have more independent research being done, oh no, multitasking, no, humans can't do that at all, and so I worry about that. And I don't know I do kind of know what the solution is for this. Pay attention to your body, obviously. I don't know how to solve when a lot of these companies come out with marketing slogans to try and get you to do more. In these kinds of tests where, okay, let's give our workers 2 to 4 screens or whatever and see if multitasking actually works for them. Those kind of tests have been done in companies or even, the military. The military tested out 10-day work weeks, right? They found out that they failed horribly, but, that it just doesn't work. But regardless, they tried. These kinds of things get tried. And so sadly, I think a lot of times we are often within, again, the corporatist system that we exist within, we're really guinea pigs for a lot of things. I'm just going to leave that there, and then we're going to move on, but stop multitasking. In fact, I remember, I think this guy's such a goof, but whatever, he made a great point with this. I think Tim Ferriss was saying, he says the worst thing to ever happen to civilization was tabbed web browsing. Because, I mean, you get lost, and it doesn't really help anything. And actually, I kind of agree with him on that one. I usually don't agree with Tim Ferriss, but that one, I agree. And that's more to that multitasking point. Okay, let's get on to number 4, because we still have so many to get through. Naps improve your brain's day-to-day performance. Let me tell you something, as somebody who has recently gotten into taking naps again, you bet your ass they do. And that's all I'm going to say about that. You want to read the research on it, link is in the show notes. But improved memory, I mean, all kinds of things where I was, better learning. We know what happens to your brain during a nap. If people tell you, oh, naps don't help, I mean, maybe some people it doesn't help them. But no, naps, the research is well in that naps are just a beautiful, wonderful thing. Even if it's 20 minutes to 2 hours, whatever, go for it. I will definitely speak to that recently because, I mean, well, in some ways, I feel like a new man. So anyway, number 5, your vision trumps all other senses. Woo! Despite being one of our 5 main senses, vision seems to take precedence over the others. Here, quote, hear a piece of information and 3 days later, you'll remember 10% of it. Add a picture and you'll remember 65% of it. Pictures beat text as well, in part because reading is so inefficient for us. Our brain sees words as lots of tiny pictures, and we have to identify certain features in the letters to be able to read them. That takes time. In fact, an incredible irony here. The whole time I'm reading this article, speaking of focus and like your vision and everything, there is a featured video that just won't fucking stop, and it keeps refreshing and restarting on Fast Company's page. It'd be beautiful if they took their own fucking advice from 2013 Fast Company and not have your website be a focus nightmare or a lack of focus nightmare. I mean, it's horrible. So anyway, regardless, you see these moving pictures, your brain is just like going for them, even if you're trying to concentrate on something else. But anyway, in fact, vision is so powerful that the best wine tasters in the world have been known to describe a dyed wine as a red. Not only is it surprising that we rely on our vision so much, but it actually isn't even that good. Take this fact, for instance, quote, our brain is doing all this guessing because it doesn't know where things are. In a 3-dimensional world, the light actually falls on our retina in a 2-dimensional fashion. So our brain approximates viewable image, end quote. Let's look at this. Anyway, it gives you a breakdown of how all of that works, but just understand that like vision is such a powerful aspect. And if you're trying to have focus, understand that your vision, is going to trump everything, and you're going to want to concentrate it and make that, if you're a writer, right? They have Focus Writer where it gets rid of everything else on your screen. Part of that would be to keep you from getting distracted because your vision is going to be going all over the place, and who knows what you're actually going to remember or be able to concentrate on. So vision, very important. I think that's a great point to bring up. Let's go to number 6. Introversion and extroversion come from different wiring in the brain. I just recently realized that introversion and extroversion are not actually related to how outgoing or shy we are, but rather how our brains recharge. And this is so huge, right? An introvert does not mean that you are, most people think you are, you're introverted, you're shy or something like that. No, it just means that for you to recharge your mental batteries, you need to be alone. That's all that introversion actually means. And extroversion means the opposite of that. It has nothing to do with, again, being outgoing or shy. Most people completely forget that. But anyway, here's an experiment that had people take gambles while in a brain scanner found the following, quote, when the gambles they took paid off, the more extroverted group showed a stronger response in 2 crucial brain regions, the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is part of the dopamine system, which affects how we learn and is generally known for motivating us to search for rewards. The difference in the dopamine system in the extrovert's brain tends to push them towards seeking out novelty, taking risks, and enjoying unfamiliar or surprising situations more than others. The amygdala is responsible for processing emotional stimuli, which gives extroverts that rush of excitement when they try something highly stimulating, which might overwhelm an introvert. More research has actually shown that the differences come from how introverts and extroverts process stimuli. That is, the stimulation coming into our brain is processed differently depending on your personality. For extroverts, the pathway is much shorter. It runs through an area where taste, touch, visual, and auditory sensory processing takes place. For introverts, stimuli runs through a long, complicated pathway in areas of the brain associated with remembering, planning, and solving problems. So, two very different setups here. But the important thing to remember is that, introversion and extroversion, very real things, or an introvert and extrovert, very real things. However, it's not what most people think of when they use those terms. Okay. And, I think that's really important to understand, is that, you might encounter somebody for a couple hours who seems the life of the party, right? But actually, they're not the life of the party. It's not, or they are the life of the party, but you might label them as an extrovert when actually, they go home at night and they just have to be alone or with very few people anyway, or fewer people. And that's how they recharge. So, but again, the way that their brain even goes after things is very, very different. Go to number 7. We tend to like people who make mistakes more. I'm not going to spend a ton of time reading on that. There's some research behind it, but, I don't know. I guess that's why so many people like me, because I make a few too many. Anyway, number 8, meditation can rewire your brain for the better. I've talked many times on Sovryn Tech about how important meditation is. Do it. You can find it out there. I think I have it on Medium. You can just do a DuckDuckGo search for the art of zero tasking. I have written down how I meditate, and I think you'll find it very helpful. More focus, less anxiety, which is, getting rid of that stress and all that. Now there's just plenty of research to back that up. Of course, better memory, more creativity, all of it. Number 9, exercise can reorganize the brain and boost your willpower. Absolutely. Absolutely. I exercise pretty much daily, pretty strenuous stuff too, at least an hour or two generally at the gym. And about the dopamine rush, about all the, there's so many aspects involved. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the brain when you're doing that. I think though, while this article lays out some stuff, and I think it's fairly accurate in what it says, I think the real boost in willpower, it rewires your brain too, because you're doing different muscle processes and you're developing things. Of course, that makes all the sense in the world. I think the real improvement in willpower comes from the fact that when you work out, you can see, it's risky. Working out can be risky, right? You might drop a dumbbell on your head or something. Okay. But it's not risky in that if you take the time, if you put time into this, are you going to get a reward out of it? No. If you put 2 hours in the gym, you're going to see rewards for it. And you can see tangible improvements from the work, which doesn't always happen in this life. And so I think that's where actually the boost in willpower, confidence, and things like that actually comes from, is that, say, you can either suddenly, I can actually lift myself up on the pull-up bar when I couldn't do that before. Or you see the muscles, or you just, in some ways you feel the strength or the thinness that you're going for, whatever it is that you see the actual change. There is a payoff, a reward for the hard work put in. And I think that's actually the mental trick where, that's why I think it's so important. I know some people say, well, it doesn't matter if you work out, you just develop, what matters is your intellect and all this stuff. But the thing is, I think even to recognize your own ability and your own power, if you can do something that gives you a sense of actual personal, intrinsic power, in yourself, and that confidence, like working out can, that gives you the confidence and, again, the willpower to do all the other things that require that mental power. Okay, so it's almost like, while it's a physical thing that you're doing, it's also a very mental game it's almost like a mental permission that, no, you are capable of doing such and such, whatever that goal or whatever that is that you're trying to do that you need so much willpower for. The article doesn't go into that, but that's something I've really come to realize over the years, with hitting the gym so much, is that, especially that first time when you do something you realize you couldn't do before, that gives you a real boost, and you feel like, in many ways, you feel like you can do anything, because you see the payoff for all that hard work. And again, we don't always get that in life. right? I mean, sometimes when you're doing stuff at work, it's a roll of the dice. Will I get this client a placement, in some news outlet or something? I don't know. It's a crapshoot. With working out, it's no crapshoot. But it gives you that amazing sense of personal power, which is a very fine and wonderful thing. So anyway, all right, let's go on to number 10. Let's see. You can make your brain think time is going slowly by doing new things. So, okay, we actually talked about this years ago on Sovryn Tech, and it's called chunking. Okay, chunking and dechunking specifically. Chunking is when, let's say you walk to work, or hell, even if you drive to work. Let's say you drive to work. You go the same route every day, 10, 20 minutes, hell, maybe an hour, sadly, whatever you have to do a day. You do the same thing every single day. And maybe the time feels like, sometimes it seems like it goes on forever. Sometimes it seems like, or maybe you just get used to it and, well, the time really flies, or whatever you're doing, something you go through a normal process every day. Chunking is when your brain gets used to its surroundings, okay, and your vision specifically, and we talked about the importance of vision, gets used to its surroundings. And because of that, the chunking that happens is that your brain puts that together, and so it doesn't take as much time recognizing its surroundings, and it basically doesn't take in as much info, and it doesn't bother looking around because it thinks it already knows everything. It's almost like a Merkle tree hash, if you want to get a little technical about it, or hashing with a Merkle tree. And it's funny, but if you take the time to look around, and that's called dechunking. Okay, where you're trying to see new things in your very familiar surroundings, time does seem to go slower. I mean, now time is a constant. It's not like actually, I mean, how many times have you heard people say that, right? Wow, time just seems to be going by so fast these days when they get older. That's because of chunking. That's because they've gotten so used to their way of life, or the house that they're in, or the path that they're on, that their brain doesn't take the time to take in all the surroundings in the same way. It just kind of fills in the gaps on its own. So you can dechunk by just taking the time to really pay attention to your surroundings and look at things in a new way. And time can actually, or it feels like it's not actually slowing down, like literally or physically, but it feels like it's slowing back down. And so that's a very, very real thing. Again, we talked about that. There was, this quotes similar research that we covered on Sovryn Tech in the past. So there you go. There's 10 things that maybe you didn't realize how your brain works, and a couple of which I think are actually bullshit of what they claim. Like that whole thing the whole start of this article, that your brain is more creative when it's tired. I call nonsense on that one. But some of this other stuff, very helpful. So anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! The Man of Tomorrow here, and very excited to tell you about a new Sovryn Tech sponsor. Oh yes, I mean, and this is something I am so on board with. I love it. CryptoList, CryptoList.com. CryptoList.com is a website with trading view charts for Bitcoin and other digital assets. No accounts, no login, just price histories displayed in the trading view charting plugin with a nice dark night mode theme that's easy on your eyes. It's fast, it's free, and it's open source. Woo! Are you a developer and want to add a feature or fix a bug? Check out the GitHub link on CryptoList.com and submit a pull request. Again, that's CryptoList.com. Check it out, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Jump on it. Let's get back into the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, but a great place. Like if you wanted to talk about, things you didn't know about the brain. I'm glad they didn't even have to spend time on that whole 10% myth, right? That we only use 10% of our brain, blah, 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 or the misunderstanding around that, thankfully. But if you ever want to talk about that kind of stuff, or maybe you just want to, call into some nationally syndicated radio show and say, hey, this works for me. A great place to do that. I want you to go to freetalklive.com. Freetalklive.com, the number 27 talk show in the United States. How could you not want to be on that? And it's an open phone show. You call in 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night. You call in, you talk it up, whatever the hell you want to talk about. And they bring in great subjects too. The hosts there, they do their thing. So go to freetalklive.com. You're going to love it. Again, number 27 talk show. You can be on it. Why not? Go for it. And I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! It's been such an honor to have them as a sponsor, because Well, I mean, I started Sovryn Tech before I was on Free Talk Live, but they're right neck and neck there. And it was such a joy, such a privilege to do that show for 2 years when I was on Free Talk Live. But it's been running, well over a decade now. That show's been going on forever. It's so awesome. I think I've been doing Sovryn Tech for a long time, for 7 years. I mean, at that point, they were almost already doing, I think, Free Talk Live for 10 years at that point. Incredible. So check it out, freetalklive.com. And again, I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. All right, let's get into our HackSec story, which is kind of, it's not exactly, it sort of has to do with security, kind of. But we got to squeeze this in. I got to talk about it. And it's Amazon's global broadband ambitions start with 3,236 satellites. And there is a conversation to have around this. The story I'm reading from is from Android Police. Let's get into it. Amazon has confirmed that it is working to start a satellite broadband service that will serve most of the world. The plans, first reported by GeekWire, went under the codename Project Kuiper, the name referring to the icy asteroid belt beyond Neptune's orbit. They called for a total of 3,236 satellites spread across 3 different altitudes of low Earth orbit. The paperwork was filed by the FCC on behalf of Kuiper Systems, LLC, obviously, Stanley breaking in, obviously owned by Amazon. Responding to requests for comment, Amazon released a statement through email, quote, Project Kuiper is a new initiative to launch a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites that will provide low latency, high-speed broadband connectivity to unserved and underserved communities around the world. This is a long-term project that envisions serving tens of millions of people who lack basic access to broadband internet. We look forward to partnering on this initiative with companies that share this common vision, end quote. The company's response goes on to say that the constellation would cover a range between the 56th parallel north and the 56th parallel south, a region containing about 95% of the world's population. Its largest satellite, ISP competitors, have already flown dishes to orbit. SpaceX has 2 prototypes in the air and, according to CNBC, looks to launch up to 4,425 satellites. OneWeb, which has backing from Sprint owner SoftBank, has 6 satellites up and may have as many as 650 in the future. No timeline has been established for when Amazon will have all of its dishes shuttled, but based on OneWeb cost estimates, the e-commerce giant could spend billions over the course of several years. Now, that's the end of the story there. Let's break this down. First off, how exactly are they going to launch thousands of satellites? One thing to understand is that much like what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX's satellites, which have the same idea of a satellite internet, these are microsatellites. They are very small. Now, SpaceX is able to start launching already. Why? Because SpaceX has shuttles. They have payload lifters. They have their own spacecraft. Well, just so happens, Jeff Bezos has Blue Origin, right? Amazon has its own space company, effectively, or Bezos does, I should say. So they can very easily, launch their own payloads willy-nilly as they need. Of course, going through various air regulations and everything that are required in whatever part of the world you happen to be in. But basically, they have all the tools to really make this happen. And when you say, are we going to, put 3,000 some odd, big satellites out there? Again, like I said, they are microsatellites. Now, the interesting thing to bring up here, there's a couple points to talk about with this. One is that every tech giant has been working on creating its own internet. Its own infrastructure, should I say, its own internet infrastructure. Every single one. And we've been covering it for years. Facebook has Project Titan, right? Where they have solar powered drones that are, transmitting down internet. Obviously that solves the latency issue, which was one of the big issues with satellite internet historically. Like, say you wanted to have satellite internet while you're on a yacht. There was a time in my life where I was on one and the internet speed sucked. And that's because of latency, dealing with atmospheric issues, clouds, all the good stuff. So, Project Titan from Facebook is a way to solve that, where you just have these drones that just, keep like repeaters, just land and take off, and, keep transmitting down internet. And I think they got something like 3G speeds. Speaking of 3G speeds, Google's Project Loon, which was literally launching like weather balloons, that would transmit down 3G internet. So Google's been trying to do this for a while as well. So Facebook, Google, Apple. What is Apple doing? Apple had, in my opinion, now I don't know if they're going to keep going forward with this, but I theorized that this is basically the idea of what they're doing. They have in iPhones what's called the multi-peer connectivity framework. Okay, and this is basically like Wi-Fi Direct or Bluetooth, where other iPhones can talk to other iPhones without an actual internet data connection, right, from a telco. They can just communicate with each other. And I've theorized for a while that Apple devices would basically be able to just, like a mesh network, connect to each other, okay, using this multi-peer connectivity framework. So that's Apple's solution for having their own internet infrastructure. Because, again, it looked like for a while, and to some degree, I think things are still going in this way, where these companies, even though Google just shut down Google Plus, right? But where these companies look like, they want to create walled gardens, okay, where you want their content. It's just like AOL back in the old days of the internet, right? Where, you can only get that through their, through having an account with them and within their own little infrastructure, okay, their own little server infrastructure. And I think a lot of these companies are still going that direction. Apple's hooking you in even more, obviously, with what we talked about last week, like the Apple Card and so on. But basically, this is Amazon's attempt at their 95% of the world's population they're going to have covered with their own internet. And, is this going to cost billions of dollars? Sure. Does even with Bezos's, divorce that's going through? Well, apparently he gets to keep 75% of Amazon stock. So he's still the majority shareholder with Amazon, even during his divorce. Look, when Bezos does like a bond sale, for Amazon, there's every investor in the world, even whether it looks like he's going to turn a profit in the next 20 years or not. Investors will jump on it because they know in the long term, either A, they're going to be able to sell off their stock or bonds to somebody at some degree of profit, or at least at face value. Or, they know that in 20 years or 10, maybe even sooner, that they're going to get the payoff for that. Because remember, Amazon didn't make money for 20 years. Like it didn't turn a profit. And they kept doing bond sales. They kept doing, various investor runs and everything. Just Bezos would come on stage and he'd say, give me your money. And people would do it because they knew at the very least that he had a plan and eventually it would pay off. And I think Bezos has proven the point that his long-term plans absolutely work. And this is a guy who really always thinks in the long term, right? We're talking about a guy that built a multi-million-dollar 10,000-year clock and just put it in the middle of the desert. This is a guy that always thinks on the long term. And anybody, with the ability to invest and desire to invest in him knows that that's how he thinks and knows that there's going to be a payoff in the end. And I'd never bet against this guy. And that's why I've been touting for years on Sovryn Tech, the Amazon World Domination Tour, because he knows the score. Like, I whatever he had in mind, I'm like, okay, look, just give it a few years and this is where this is going to go and this is what it's going to do. And I was right every time. Okay. And because he does a very slow game, much slower, and he's not reliant upon, he's just like, okay, I have this idea. He's not reliant upon, like Google and Facebook and some of the other companies, tech giants or maybe not so giant, they rely heavily upon feedback and metadata and data that they get from customers and clients. While Amazon certainly has a lot of that, okay, they're mainly running off of what I think is Bezos's personal vision for the future, which I've talked about many times. There's a book out there I want you to read. It's called Trekonomics. Yes, it's a reference to Star Trek, but who's the only tech giant CEO that's ever been in Star Trek? Oh, it's Jeff Bezos. Isn't that something? Must be a big fan to want to be like an alien in one of those movies. And he was. Just a few years ago, it was in Star Trek Beyond. So, I think that's looking at what his vision of the future is, and he's basing it on that. He's not basing, he's basing some things upon certainly, the thing is, he doesn't have to base it on client data or on customer data. He's got everybody out by the balls with Amazon anyway. It doesn't fucking matter. So now the other point that I want to get into with this. So this is Amazon's, Amazon with AWS, they're already powering most of the internet anyway, to actually provide a huge chunk of the infrastructure with satellites. That's just adding on. Amazon World Domination Tour continues. That's all that is. Okay. Now, even if it takes 20 years, the payoff's going to be there, like I'm telling you. Can Amazon kind of fail? Sure. But when they fail, they just leapfrog, right? Because you can think about the Fire Phone, and the Fire Phone failed, sure. But then what did that inspire them to do? It's like, okay, we'll just skip the whole category and create the Echo. So that's just what they'll do. Anyway, the other point here, and this is the part that bothers me a little bit, is I think a lot of people feel that, SpaceX or like Elon Musk is kind of the anti-Jeff Bezos. I don't think so. In fact, it's very clear in Amazon's own email response. They said that we look forward to partnering on this initiative with companies that share this common vision. The one that shares this common vision all the way is SpaceX, is Elon Musk. And I think, and there's been a couple points on Twitter where I feel like Bezos and Musk were a little buddy-buddy. I think maybe they're doing a bit of gentleman's competition right now, as it were. Okay, and I use that term in a conventional sense. And I think they're going to end up working together on this. And I think that they may be both looking at because you've got a guy who, Elon Musk says he's an anarchist in the, utopian E&M Banks sense. And then who is the guy that's personally funding the creation of, the Culture Series, E&M Banks, the Culture Series. Who's the guy that's actually going to make the Culture Series into a miniseries? Who's the guy who's funding it out of his own pocket and tweeted about it as a boast? Jeff Bezos. I think these guys have the same ideas. I think they're totally working together. That's my personal opinion on the matter. If you think Elon Musk is if you think Bezos is the bad guy and Elon Musk is the good guy, I think you're fucking insane. I think they're working. This particularly feels very much like they're in cahoots. I think for Blue Origin and SpaceX to work together and share data and all this stuff, they might be having a little fun with, who can land theirs better and blah, blah, blah. Sure, they're doing that kind of shit. But I think by and large, I get the sense, and I'm going to talk about this more in the future on Sovryn Tech. I'm getting the sense these guys are actually working very, very closely together. So get that, that narrative out of your head that somehow these guys are like competitors. I think at the end of the day, they're going to be working together, and they have, if you read Trekonomics, or if you've listened to past episodes over the past year of Sovryn Tech, where I've talked about what I think Bezos' vision of the future is, you may not like that. So anyway, all right, we'll wrap this segment up, and we'll be right back with more. You're listening to Sovryn Tech. Woo!
Beyond the moon,
fighters, wave after wave after wave,
lies a lone outpost in space.
Potentially dangerous alien technology was smuggled aboard this station.
Beyond the stars,
blood calls out for blood.
Lies a dream for universal peace.
One night you'll wake up and find our teeth at your throat.
Beyond imagination,
who would do this? Why?
Lies Babylon 5, the series.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
This week in blockchain.
It is time to talk up some blockchain, so let's do it. And we got a story here from April 3rd, not April 1st. April 3rd, because we all hate April 1st, at least you better. But from April 3rd, 2019, from CNBC. Here's the headline. Don't buy Bitcoin, warns wealth manager. We're likely, quote, going to see cryptocurrencies collapse, end quote. This is written by Kathleen Elkins. Here we go. I guess, look, let's just be honest here. I guess CNBC was just looking for a hot take. Because, everything was, Bitcoin in the past week has jumped very nicely over 5,000 and stuck there. I think last I was looking, it was about 5,100. Okay. And, a lot of people are getting hot and heavy about it. I know Gizmodo, did it again. Gizmodo was being, they're like, oh, well, everybody's getting excited about cryptocurrencies because they didn't learn from their past, and they should know better. And so they were down on it. And I guess CNBC was just looking for somebody to, make an interesting story, because I've never heard of this wealth manager, but maybe you have. Anyway, let's read a little bit of the story here. The price of Bitcoin surged more than 15% Tuesday and briefly crossed the $5,000 mark for the first time since mid-November. It's still well below the all-time high it hit in December 2017 of nearly $20,000. Other virtual currencies saw sudden price jumps too. Ether and XRP both rose around 7%. Before you start buying cryptocurrency, though, consider the advice of Peter Mallouk, certified financial planner and president of wealth management firm Creative Planning. Quote, what we're going to see most likely is we're going to see cryptocurrencies collapse, end quote. Stallion breaking in, if you are with the wealth management firm Creative Planning, not investment advice, but I guess it kind of is in a way. I'd run the hell away from these people, but let's read on. There are so many types of virtual currencies like Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and of course Bitcoin that, quote, there's no way that even a fraction of them can survive, end quote. Mallouk, who is the also author of the 5 Mistakes Every Investor Makes and How to Avoid Them, tells CNBC Make It. He's going to come out with the, actually an updated version of that book, Stallion Breaking In. He'll probably come next year. He'll come out with an updated version of this. That'll be the 6 Mistakes Every Investor Makes and How to Avoid Them, which the 6th mistake will be telling people to not invest in crypto. But let's read on. Quote, is it possible that maybe 1 or 2 will work out in the future? Sure it is, end quote. But Peter says, in the meantime, if you buy cryptocurrency, you get no income. It's not a real investment. It's speculation, end quote. Stallion breaking in for a second. Most people don't even know the difference between the term investment and speculation. Like, they don't, and I get the difference is that investment is something that you're holding on that holds value into the future, right? More like a hedge, as to where speculation is, well, potentially this could be worth X, however much more, into the future. Most people don't understand that difference, and they probably clicked on this link expecting something like that. But even if we go with Peter's differentiation here of those terms, which is fine, he's still wrong. But let's read on. Instead, invest in, quote, things that are going to pay you to own them, end quote, he says. Quote, own real estate where you're collecting rent, own stocks where you're collecting dividends, own bonds when you're collecting yield, end quote. These things that are going to give you some kind of payoff. As a general rule of thumb, quote, you don't want to own something that's not going to pay you, end quote, says Mallouk. If you're reading on, if you're excited by blockchain, the technology behind cryptocurrency, there are ways to invest in that besides buying crypto, he adds. Quote, there are companies that are very heavily investing in blockchain, and you can buy those companies like IBM and Accenture, end quote. And, quote, companies like Walmart are using it to develop ways to run their inventory. That's the way to play blockchain technology, not by trying to buy cryptocurrency, end quote. Keep in mind, he continues, that while, quote, blockchain technology is real and you've got big companies like IBM and Accenture and others investing in it, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin is going to work out or Ripple is going to work out, says Peter. The TV worked out, but everything that comes out of it, we don't want to watch. Palm and BlackBerry were fantastic, but Apple came in and took them out. Lycos and Excite were here before Google, end quote. He's not the only expert who has warned against buying into digital currencies. In 2017, CNBC's Jim Cramer said that Bitcoin is a pure gamble and, quote, kind of like monopoly money. Obviously, there's people who use it. If you ever say anything bad about it, there's like this Bitcoin mafia that comes after you, but it is an oddity that has nothing to do with us, end quote, as investors. Quote, it's just pure gambling at this point, the market expert continued on Squawk Box. I mean, if you want to gamble, go to Vegas. Vegas is fabulous. And JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said that Bitcoin is a fraud at the Delivering Alpha conference presented by CNBC and institutional investors in 2017. It's just not a real thing. Eventually, it will be closed. But, oh boy. And then he compares it to tulip bulbs. Which tulip mania, sure. Some of the stuff you could maybe compare to some cryptocurrencies. Maybe you could compare to tulip mania. Of course, now JP Morgan Chase is totally on, or seemingly on board with blockchain. We've talked about that in past episodes of Sovereign Tech. Anyway, here's the conceit that Peter's making. And he's saying, here I'm going to quote him, and here's where he's dead wrong. You don't want to own something that's not going to pay you. Now, let's just stop right there. We can stop halfway in that sentence. You don't want to own something. Here's the thing. Everything that he lists off, real estate, stocks, bonds, all that. Do you really own those? Like, really? Do you... a lot of bonds, I mean, what? Like, maybe you have like some real classical ones, like war bonds or something like that, or stocks. I mean, so many of these things work within regulatory environments that exist only within the borders of the respective, geographies and territories. Real estate is largely, I mean, often you're paying rent, in the form of taxes on that sort of thing. You don't really own that. Okay. I mean, you're basically renting the land from the state. The conceit, the idea that somehow you own these other things is preposterous. One of the most beautiful things, about Bitcoin particularly, but also with other cryptocurrencies and some other aspects of blockchain technology, is that for the very first time, you really own something of value, that had recognized value between you and someone else. Much like, say, gold or whatever, even though gold, can become subject to various laws, including within, regional areas, right? The government can come and knock and give us all your gold and they'll take it away from you. That has happened. And not in Nazi Germany. That happened in the United States. So, Bitcoin was one of those initial points where something that had recognized global value as well as regional value that you actually owned and was not distributed by the state. That is perhaps the most beautiful thing about Bitcoin outside of its technological framework, outside of, the technology itself. It's a stunning thing. Everything that this asshat, is talking about, you really don't own at the end of the day. If you want a tech comparison to it, I mean, it's like with Windows. You don't own your copy of Windows. You have a license to use Windows. Okay. You have a license to use it. You don't actually own it when you lay down $150. Okay. Now, I mean, if you want to be, you want to be real saucy slapnuts and you want to, say, oh, well, yeah, the government can, they want my land, come and take it. I mean, okay. See how well that works out for you. But I mean, by and large, even because most of those people are also going to say, well, but the Constitution says, okay, well, again, you're still appealing to government and you're still saying that government is largely in charge of, either giving you the right to even have that land or that they're protecting it or whatever. Either way, it's government permission. Your use of that land. You don't really own any of that stuff. I mean, should you be able to? Well, owning land that's a very complex conversation to have in the first place. So it's not like the best way to go. But a lot of these stocks and other things, all of this, ends up going through the SEC and whatever, and it's all permission based ultimately by the state. You don't own it. Okay, you might be able to reap some rewards from it, but you don't own it. However, Bitcoin, on the other hand, you bet your goddamn ass you own that. And it crosses every border. It does not need permission from any state. It can work completely fine just on its own, as it has for a very long time, and it should. So Peter is dead wrong. I mean, he's just way off base in his whole argument. And again, it must have just been a slow news day. And CNBC just needs some kind of hot take. That's really what this was all about. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. And go get yourself some Bitcoin. It's still on sale. In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. On April 9th, 2019, blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is going to run across the North American continent, Miami to Santa Monica. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com.
This week's online review.
Oh, a segment I know so many of you have wanted to have come back because it's always a good time. And it is your weekly online review where we find the best products across this crazy internet while it's still terrestrial and not being lobbed down by satellite, thanks to Jeff Bezos and the Amazon World Domination Tour. I say that somewhat facetiously, but, well, maybe not. And but ironically, we're going to read product reviews from Amazon of all things, just in case you didn't think the World Domination Tour had gone far enough yet. It certainly invaded Sovryn Tech in its own ways. In fact, I am even doing the show from an Amazon branded microphone. Can you believe this? They have taken over. No, they took over 5 years ago. What are you talking about? But all right. So this is very, very exciting for me. Now I'm well known. And you can see we're already going past the hour mark here. I told you, I think we're going to have to do an hour and a half. I am well known the man of tomorrow, is known of, in many ways, being a man of yesterday, meaning that I am a walking 80s and 90s encyclopedia. In fact, I am still wondering if actually I wasn't born until like 2002, and it was like an immaculate conception, and I just came in this form, this 6'1" giant frame that was just conceived by the 80s and 90s having a baby, and they had me in 2001 at the turn of the millennium. I don't know. Obviously, I'm kidding. But yes, I do love the 90s, and let me tell you something that we loved in the 90s. As much as Jolt Cola, which we certainly love that, another one that we all loved was Surge. Surge is this amazing green juice commonly called, back in the 90s, the nectar of the gods. And it, in the past couple of years, has made a comeback. Surge went away for a little while. I don't know if there was some kind of regulatory environment against Big Sugar that was... I mean, they're always trying to, like, in New York City, they're trying to get rid of sodas and everything. And look, I'm not saying that people should be drinking soda. Maybe you shouldn't be drinking Surge. But, well, let's see if these reviews will change your mind. I mean, this is, if you think Surge is just like Mountain Dew from some other brand, oh, no, check out this review and maybe you'll be convinced by your own. This is from 2017. Okay, March 13th, 2017, almost 2 years ago. Here we go. Nectar of the Gods is the title by Bobby Bureau. Can you trust a name like that? You bet your ass. Verified purchase here. So we know Bobby Bureau got his hand on some Surge. And in fact, you can get like a 32 pack here, for fuck's sake. Here we go. The day started just like any other. This is the review. 5 stars. Wake up early. Brush my teeth. It's a good thing if you're buying Surge. Shower. And watch the morning news. Everything was just as usual. Only something didn't feel right. I ignored the exceptionally handsome weatherman on the KTVU news team to ponder where the strange feelings I had about my morning were coming from. Ding dong! The doorbell rang, which was peculiar, so I got up with a slight gusto and opened the front door. Nobody was there. I shut the door and walked back to the living room table to finish my fruity pebbles when I heard an echoing whisper from outside. Nectar of the gods, it muttered quietly. I could see a bright light pouring through the cracks in the doorframe. Feeling incredibly compelled, I opened the door. Just then, trumpets and an orchestral angels played a symphony of holy music. Ah! Light shone down from the heavens above to my front doorstep to reveal my Amazon pantry box full of Surge soda. My heart lit up and I felt a love and joy from beyond this realm. I spared no time. I ran inside with the package and knocked the flower vase and fruity pebbles from the living room table to make room for the Surge. I grabbed a bowl and liquid nitrogen from the lab and instantly chilled my new ethereal beverage from the gods. I cracked open the can and paused for a moment. There's no going back, I thought to myself. I smirked and chugged the entire 16 fluid-ounce can of Surge in one amazing stream. I then lifted the can into the air triumphantly and let out a victory cry. Power surged through me like lightning bolts. My muscles bulged from my body like Goku from Dragon Ball Z. My neurons strengthened, grew, and created new neural networks that increased my intelligence tenfold. I became my final form. It was like me, but times diamond. I ran outside, not bothering to put on pants. My neighbor Larry across the street glared at me with his beautiful smile and wonderful family by his side. He was just about to get into his Lamborghini, which he loved to rub into my face. I'm sure he loved to rub it too, but anyway. I marched across the street to put an end to his one-upping lifestyle. He put his family behind him for protection. Quote, "Bobby, buddy, is there something I can do for you?" he said nervously. I smiled and pushed him out of the way. I picked up his car and threw it miles into space with little effort. He and his family were stunned. I looked at his wife with a smile. She backed up to the garage door with fear and lust in her eyes. I threw her to the ground and grabbed Larry by the hands. Blushing and giggling, I gave him a kiss on the cheek. "I'll see you later, Larry, but right now I need to take care of something." I knelt down into the Terminator pose and then jumped up, blasting off into the atmosphere. I came down into the parking lot of my work, leaving a massive crater and burning squirrels in its place. Oh, the poor squirrels. Did you have to hurt the squirrels? Oh, for fuck's sake. Anyway, all right. I marched in to find my good-for-nothing slacker of a boss, the same one who demoted me and took my favorite paperweight. Quote, You could just tease me with that cute little butt of yours all this time and get away with it? I don't think so, I said confidently. He cowered in fear. I grabbed him and whipped him around. You're cute when you're scared. Tee-hee, I giggled. The rest is history. What should have been an ordinary day filled with disappointment and shame became the first day of the rest of my newfound glorious life. Thank you, Surge. Now, if that's not enough to convince you, I mean, that sounds like a very true story. If that's not enough to convince you to buy Surge, here's the next one from Joel Cotton. It's 5 stars, Dynamite. I am converting my 401k into Surge. I'm going to ride out this market. Anyway, folks, Surge is back. Might want to get it. I mean, talk about nectar of the gods. Woo! Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Oh boy, they got a little weird at points. Hey baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovryntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
The Climax.
One-click ordering. Buy now. Surge. 32-pack. Perfect. Oh, hey, welcome back to the show. Yes. Well, so we're really cleaning out the closet here a bit on this episode of Sovryn Tech. And one thing that I've wanted to talk about for weeks was a movie that I recently rewatched. Had a beautiful time doing so. And that is, I consider it a classic, in my opinion. I know not everybody may agree with this, even though it might fall into the realm of the cult classic. But the 1984, let's just be honest about this, the Tanya Roberts vehicle, that being Sheena. Sheena is, of course, based off of what should be a very popular comic book character. In fact, a comic book character that was very Wonder Woman-esque and actually was created and came out before Wonder Woman. Just never took off necessarily in the same way, though arguably. I mean, well, it depends, because there's been a lot of Wonder Woman movies and TV shows, or like pilots for TV shows that maybe like never went off the ground. I mean, Sheena has she had a TV show, back in the black and white days, right? There's a classic of that. Sheena had, in fact, the first time I really encountered Sheena was the Gina Lee Nolan show that I still enjoy the hell out of. Hell, I have the DVD set from 2000 that went from 2000 to 2002. Of course, Gina Lee Nolan, wasn't she known for, I think she was like one of the models, I guess we'll say, on The Price is Right. Anyway, she was great. But there was a movie with Tanya Roberts, which most people remember Tanya Roberts really from two other things. Okay, that one is Beastmaster with Mark Singer, which is a fucking awesome movie. Okay. I think Sheena is too. So I'm getting that out of the way early. But also she was a replacement angel on the original Charlie's Angels. She was kind of in the later season, I think, so wasn't so successful or as well known, but Tanya Roberts is certainly, definitely, and she's athletic, brilliant, and just, some people want to crack jokes about her acting. I completely disagree with you on all that. And clearly just a beautiful person inside and out that's ever been, on the screen, be it TV screen or, on the big screen. And she had been on the big screen, and she still rocks. She still acts to this day. And she was very smart for getting into more of the production side of the entertainment industry, fairly early on in her career, really. But anyway, so Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, this is a movie that had been kind of optioned around because the original character was created in the 30s. This is kind of one of those Flash Gordon things. And I think really in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a lot of looking back at a lot of these classic characters in entertainment, right? Like you had the Flash Gordon movie, Buck Rogers came back. You pretty much had everything coming back except for Captain Video. Right. And, Sheena was one of these original characters, and certainly a very strong female character that the 80s, I think, was very much looking for, that just came out right on the back of a zebra. Unfortunately, in the movie, the zebra is very clearly a painted horse, but that's okay, because that's sort of what it needs. This is a movie that, it opens right up, written by Leslie Stevens and Lorenzo Semple Jr., but John Gullerman directed it. And I mean, you can really see he's trying to paint a picture here. He really was trying to make, in my opinion, like, I know people think this movie's cheesy and all this stuff, and I get it. And Tanya Roberts doing the best acting job of the world. I mean, this isn't as great as her role, say, in Beastmaster. And I'm dead serious about that. I really think Beastmaster is an awesome movie. But, she's delivering, and she's totally believable. And I mean, she's got that absolutely athletic body that where all the stunts that Sheena pulls off, you have no problem believing that. And look, I get it. I do. And I sympathize. I empathize with this. Okay. Like with the beauty standards that Hollywood puts on, especially on women. Okay. It's crazy. I mean, now they can just CGI shit. Like literally they CGI over actors and they get rid of their wrinkles and everything like that. At the time, to be able to, have that kind of body and to, do that athleticism and all that, you had to be the real deal. I mean, you go back, in Hollywood, especially, you go back, I don't know, well now, I guess 70, 60, 70, 80 years ago, literally that long ago. You go back that kind of time, like actors had to be able to do everything. You had to be able to sing. You had to be able to act. You had to be, healthy, or, whatever the conventional sense of healthy is. I want to be very sensitive to that. Okay. You had to be this amazing human being to be able to pull this shit off. You had to be able to dance. You had to be able to do acrobatics. You had to be able to do all this shit. Watch a classic musical like Seven Brides or Seven Brothers. Those people, I mean, there's no stuntmen there. They're pulling all that shit off themselves. That's what you used to have to bring to the table. And in many ways, and I'm dead serious about this, I think Tanya Roberts was bringing that classical, being able to fucking do anything, okay, into 80s cinema with Sheena. And I think that gets put on display. This is also a movie that has some very, I mean, the lines are very simple and kind of cutesy, but because it's, it's taking place where English is a second language, it kind of works, right? Because it takes place in the jungles of Africa and all this. Like it works the way that, the simplicity of a lot of the, of a lot of the script, I think actually gives it almost its authentic charm. And so I think people look at this movie in the completely wrong way. I mean, sure, there's points where it's supposed to be sexy and all this. I mean, and look, if you've never seen Tanya Roberts naked in either Charlie's Angels or in Beastmaster, yes, you get your opportunity in this one. And somehow the movie's rated PG. Granted, this was before Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom came out, right? Which, when that came out, that's when PG-13 first became a thing. Maybe this would have been PG-13 back then. But it's interesting to note, maybe people were a little, not people, parents, I should say, were a little less sensitive then. I don't know. But it works off. It's very authentic. It's a very sweet film. It's very cute. And I think it has some things to say, that at the time were valid messages to bring out. I liked some of the comments about, lethality, against lethality and guns and things like this that I thought were very interesting within the film. Sheena lays out some genuine wisdom, in my opinion. And it's a shame. They were planning on, I think they were looking to do a good, trilogy out of this, much like they were doing with Conan. Again, Conan, another one of those classical characters, right? Robert E. Howard was writing Conan, 60 years previous or so. I think they were looking to kind of bring her in with that. And the movie didn't do money. It didn't do it right. They're talking about remaking Sheena now. I think in 2017, a certain company got the rights for it and everything. But I think this movie, I think it's just a lot of fun. It's very authentic. It's very charming. And in some ways it's sexy, but sexy is not bad. Sexy is a good thing. And just check it out. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. In fact, you can get the DVD box set. It's great. You can get the whole box set where it has this movie. It has some of the classic black and white episodes, from the original TV series of Sheena. But then also it has all the seasons of Gina Lee Nolan's Sheena. And this is really a powerful female character before Wonder Woman again. And also, got a lot of airtime when, sadly, Wonder Woman wouldn't get the time of day. I'm glad she's getting it now. But before then, you really had Sheena, as one of these like comic book, female comic book characters that really takes center stage and, could kick ass with the boys. Or even better, and which I say is even better. I'm fully supportive of this. So yeah, this is a movie I think that deserves another look where you can just appreciate it for, again, kind of the kitschy, kind of the campy thing that it is, and just enjoy it for that. It doesn't have to be sold off to you like everything seems to have to get sold off as the greatest adventure of all time, or it has to be like purely comedic. This is something where it can just be campy and it can be fun for its own sake, and it doesn't have to fall prey to any of that marketing anymore. So, and again, it's a simple adventure. I mean, really the only character that's unbelievable in this is the fucking lead guy that Ted Wass is playing. Like he's a joke, in my opinion. I mean, which I guess sells off Sheena as the far more powerful character that she is, and really the stronger female presence that she is. But he's horrible. So that's the only part of the movie that I didn't really like. But I mean, there's so much to love about it. Richard Hartley's score it feels like something Vangelis would have done, which is really slick. I definitely recommend listening to that. There's so much to appreciate about this film, and John Gullerman was really doing his he's doing what he could with the content that he had. I mean, I know they ran into production troubles and everything, but if you've never checked this movie out, this is another one I challenge you to revisit, because just like when we reviewed Masters of the Universe, there's something special here in what some of the actors are trying to provide. Just like Frank Langella was phenomenal as Skeletor, right? And just delivers some of the most powerful and greatest lines in movie history. Sheena has much the same aspect to it. So that's part of why I revisited it, and that's why I think you should revisit it. So anyway, and hopefully next week, I hope you revisit Sovryn Tech, as we'll be back with an all-new episode, and who knows, maybe we'll start rocking that little longer format. We'll see what happens. But I will see all of you on the other side, and make sure you go to Zomia1.com and you join that Zomia 1 Underground, baby. You get on top of it, you get all that extra access, get all that extra me. And how could you not want more of me? Come on. No, I'm kidding. I don't want any more of me either. All right, I'll see all of you on the other side. Woo!
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is Copy Heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.
Woo! Can you get enough of the Man of Tomorrow? I didn't think so. Well, now you're going to get even more, along with some of the hottest hosts and podcasts around, because now Sovryn Tech has become an entire network. Woo! Zomia 1, the most rebellious podcast network in the galaxy, with bleeding edge shows covering science, technology, and even pop culture. Podcasts like Sovryn Trek, bringing you the latest and greatest in everything Star Trek. TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast, where the Man of Tomorrow and Robin Freebeard talk Star Wars like no other show out there. The Hard and Fast podcast, where metal is king and the latest album reviews and interviews with the greatest acts in hard rock and heavy metal happen. And you can even become a member of the Zomia 1 Underground and get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content and shows. And this isn't Patreon, baby. Oh no, this is all happening on the premier podcast platform.
Podbean. So head over to Zomia1.com, that's ZOMIAONE.com, and become a part of the future with Zomia One, and become a member of the Zomia One Underground. And while you're at it, download the Podbean app on iOS and Android. Be the future. Zomia1.com.